The bicycle rode quietly through the early morning streets of Lagos while the city stretched awake around Edirin Anaborhi. Street vendors arranged baskets of oranges and bananas beneath colorful umbrellas. Danfo conductors shouted destinations from open doors. Office workers hurried toward bus stops carrying dreams and worries in equal measure. Nobody paid special attention to the young woman on the old bicycle. That anonymity was exactly how Edirin liked it. Yet on this particular morning, something felt different. A black Prado appeared in her rearview mirror. At first, she ignored it. Lagos was full of black Prados. 5 minutes later, it was still there. 10 minutes later, it remained behind her. Not overtaking. Not falling back. Watching. Edirin's expression remained calm, but her mind became alert. The Prado reminded her of something. Tony's fear. The debt collectors. The men who didn't send reminder emails. The men who collected with pain instead of paperwork. As she approached a traffic junction, the Prado slowed. Its tinted window lowered slightly. A face appeared. Not threatening. Not familiar. But definitely interested. The man smiled. Then the window rolled back up. The vehicle drove away. Just like that. No confrontation. No explanation. Yet somehow, that frightened Edirin more than if he had threatened her openly. Because powerful people rarely announce their intentions. They simply arrived. Meanwhile, inside a luxury penthouse overlooking Eco-Atlantic, Tony Elumelu Karibo had not slept. Empty coffee cups covered the table. Financial documents were scattered across the floor. His phone buzzed again. A message appeared. 48 hours. Below it came another. No extensions. Tony closed his eyes. His entire empire existed on borrowed confidence. Most people saw expensive suits. Luxury cars. Exclusive clubs. Business magazines. What they didn't see were the cracks. The unpaid loans. The lawsuits. The desperate deals. The creditors. The lies. Especially the lies. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. His stomach tightened. He answered immediately. A calm voice greeted him. Good morning, Mr. Karibo. Tony recognized it instantly. Chief Bello. The man nobody wanted calling. Chief. I heard you attended the gala. Tony swallowed. Yes. I also heard your little investment proposal is experiencing complications. Tony remained silent. The silence was answer enough. The older man laughed softly. A businessman survives many things, Tony. Another pause. But he never survives running out of credibility. The call ended. Tony stared at the screen. For the first time in years, he felt genuine fear. At Crownlake Academy, students were still discussing the gala. Videos of Zimuzo's performance had gone viral. Social media loved her confidence. Her dramatic speech. Her elegance. Her beauty. The attention felt intoxicating. Exactly what she had always wanted. Yet something was wrong. The comments were changing. At first they praised her. Then questions began appearing. Who is she? Where does she come from? Why does nobody know her family? How does a student suddenly afford all these luxury items? The internet could be cruel. But it could also be curious. And curiosity was dangerous. Especially when built on lies. Zimuzo sat in her dormitory scrolling through hundreds of comments. Each new question felt like a knife. A knock sounded on the door. Come in. May entered. Immediately, she sensed something was wrong. You look terrible. I look famous. Those are not the same thing. Zimuzo forced a smile. But May wasn't fooled. What happened? For a moment, Zimuzo almost told the truth. Almost. Then pride arrived. Like it always did. Nothing happened. May nodded slowly. People often lied with words. Their eyes usually told the truth. And Zimuzo's eyes were terrified. Elsewhere, Auntie Faye finally returned home after receiving treatment. Her small apartment felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. She sat beside an old family photo album. Page after page revealed a different Zimuzo. A smiling little girl. A girl carrying water. A girl helping neighbors. A girl who once dreamed of becoming a doctor. Tears rolled down her cheeks. What had happened? When exactly had ambition become hunger? When had hunger become shame? And when had shame become cruelty? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door. Nobody was there. Only an envelope. Her name written carefully on the front. Inside was a single photograph. A recent photograph. Taken secretly. It showed Zimuzo leaving the chairman's study. The corporate seal clearly visible in her hand. Auntie Faye nearly dropped it. Then she noticed another item. A note. 3 words. We know everything. Her hands began trembling. That same evening, Edirin received unexpected visitors. Her father. Her grandfather. And Uncle Tobo. Whenever all 3 appeared together, something serious was happening. Edirin. Her father rarely used that tone. She immediately sat up. What happened? Uncle Tobo placed several documents on the table. Photographs. Financial reports. Property records. Security footage. Edirin's expression slowly changed. What is this? Her grandfather sighed heavily. Probo. Uncle Tobo pointed at one photograph. Tony. Another. Zimuzo. Another. The stolen corporate seal. Then finally, a document marked confidential. Edirin opened it. Her eyes widened. She looked up immediately. This can't be right. It is. No. She read it again. Then a third time. Still unbelievable. The room became silent. Because the document revealed something nobody expected. Something capable of destroying lives. Something capable of changing everything. Tony's death wasn't actually the biggest problem. The property deal wasn't the biggest problem. The stolen seal wasn't even the biggest problem. The real problem was hidden inside a decades-old file connected to the Anaborhi family itself. A secret buried for over 20 years. A secret involving inheritance. Missing ownership records. And a child. A child whose identity had never been publicly revealed. Edirin slowly lowered the file. Her heartbeat accelerated. No. Uncle Tobo nodded grimly. We verified it. Her father looked exhausted. If this information becomes public, the entire family changes. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because according to the documents lying on that table, there was a possibility that someone everyone considered an outsider. Someone everyone mocked. Someone desperately pretending to belong. Might already have a connection to the Anaborhi empire that nobody knew existed. And if the investigation was correct, the war between Edirin and Zimuzo had never been a war between strangers at all. It had been a family conflict. Neither of them knew they were fighting it. Yet, the silence inside the Anaborhi estate study felt heavier than concrete. For several long moments, nobody spoke. Edirin stared at the documents spread across the mahogany table while her mind struggled to process what she had just read. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lagos glittered beneath the night sky. Luxury yachts floated peacefully on the lagoon. Traffic lights blinked in the distance. The city looked calm. But inside the study, a storm was beginning. No. Edirin whispered. Her father rubbed his forehead. We hoped it wasn't true. Grandfather Anaborhi leaned heavily against his walking stick. But hope is not evidence. Uncle Tobo slid another file toward her. We checked hospital records. Another document. We checked court archives. Another. Land transfers. Another. Old estate payroll records. Another. Everything points to the same possibility. Edirin looked up. You mean Zimuzo? Nobody answered immediately. And that silence terrified her. Because silence often confirmed what words could not. 23 years earlier. Long before Crownlake Academy. Long before social media. Long before business empires expanded across continents. A young woman named Edirin Anaborhi had disappeared. Officially, the family claimed she traveled abroad. Unofficially, nobody spoke about her. Not even within the family. The subject became forbidden. A ghost. A shame. A secret. Edirin was grandfather Anaborhi's youngest daughter. Beautiful. Intelligent. Rebellious. The only person who regularly challenged the family's authority. Then one day she fell in love. With the wrong man. A mechanic from Mushin. A man with no connections. No money. No influence. No acceptable surname. The relationship created scandal. The Anaborhis demanded she end it. She refused. Arguments became war. Eventually she vanished. A year later, news arrived. She had died. A car accident. Case closed. Or so everyone believed. Back in the present. Edirin's hands trembled slightly. You're saying she had a child? Uncle Tobo nodded. We are saying she may have. May. We haven't proven it completely. Grandfather sighed. But we have enough evidence to investigate further. Edirin looked down at a photograph. The image was old and faded. A young Edirin stood smiling beside a small food stall. Standing beside her was another woman. Young. Poor. Friendly. And instantly recognizable. Auntie Faye. Zimuzo's mother. Edirin froze. No way. Her father nodded slowly. They knew each other. The room became silent again. Every piece was starting to connect. And every connection created more questions. Meanwhile, across Lagos, Zimuzo sat alone inside her dormitory. Sleep refused to come. Her phone screen glowed in the darkness. Messages kept arriving. Comments. Mentions. Questions. Rumors. Speculation. The attention she once wanted now felt suffocating. Then another notification appeared. Unknown number. A photo attachment. Her stomach tightened. She opened it. The blood drained from her face. The photograph showed her leaving the chairman's study. The stolen seal visible in her hand. Attached beneath it was a message. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Alone. Delete this message. Zimuzo immediately stood up. Her hands shook violently. Who sent it? Security. The academy. Tony's enemies. The Anaborhis. She had no idea. For the first time since arriving at Crownlake Academy, she felt trapped. The next morning, a black SUV arrived outside a rundown neighborhood near Soralia. Auntie Faye stood outside her apartment looking confused. The vehicle door opened. Uncle Tobo stepped out. Her eyes widened immediately. Sir. We need to talk. Fear crossed her face. Instant fear. The kind that appears when old secrets hear footsteps approaching. Tobo noticed. Interesting. Very interesting. Because innocent people usually ask questions. Guilty people recognize danger. Auntie Faye. His voice remained calm. Do you remember Adizwa Anaborhi? The woman's face turned completely white. For several seconds she forgot how to breathe. Tobo saw everything. The fear. The recognition. The guilt. She knew. She absolutely knew. Back at Crownlake Academy. Classes had barely begun when another bomb exploded. A luxury convoy entered campus. Not unusual. Rich students received visitors all the time. But this convoy was different. 20 security personnel. Armored vehicles. Government plates. The entire campus stopped moving. Students rushed toward windows. Teachers paused lectures. Even administrators looked confused. Then the main vehicle door opened. A tall elderly woman stepped out. Elegant. Powerful. Terrifying. Instantly recognizable. Madam Victoria Anaborhi. The matriarch. The woman newspapers called the Iron Queen of Lagos. The woman billionaires feared. The woman politicians respected. The woman who almost never appeared in public. Students whispered nervously. Teachers straightened their clothes. Security officers became tense. Nobody understood why she was there. Until she spoke. I want to see Zimuzo no kick. The entire school froze. Inside the principal's office. Zimuzo sat trembling. Madam Victoria observed her silently. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3. The silence became unbearable. Finally. The old woman spoke. Stand. Zimuzo obeyed immediately. Victoria walked around her slowly. Studying. Observing. Analyzing. Then something strange happened. The powerful businesswoman's expression changed. Not dramatically. But enough. Enough for everyone present to notice. She looked emotional. Just for a second. Then it vanished. What is your date of birth? Zimuzo answered. Victoria nodded. What hospital? Another answer. Victoria exchanged a glance with Tobo. A glance nobody else understood. Then she asked something unexpected. Do you know who your father is? The question hit like lightning. Zimuzo frowned. Of course. Do you? The room became uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Because Zimuzo suddenly realized something. Her mother had never spoken much about her father. Never. Not really. She always changed the subject. Always. Why? That evening. Auntie Faye finally broke. Years of silence collapsed. Years of lies. Years of protection. Gone. She sat crying inside a private meeting room at the Anaborhi estate. Across from her sat grandfather Anaborhi. Madam Victoria. Tobo. Edirin. And several lawyers. Nobody interrupted. Nobody rushed her. Finally she spoke. Adizwa didn't die immediately. The room froze. Every person present stopped breathing. What? Tears flowed down her cheeks. The accident happened. She nodded. But she survived. Silence. Pure silence. Then another sentence. One sentence. A sentence capable of changing everything. A few weeks before the accident. She looked toward the floor. Adizwa gave birth. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody blinked. Because everyone already knew what question came next. The only question that mattered. Grandfather Anaborhi's voice shook. What happened to the child? Auntie Faye broke completely. Years of pain erupted from her soul. The answer emerged through tears. I took her. Silence. I promised Adizwa I would protect her. More silence. She was afraid your family would take the baby. The old man's hand started shaking. Victoria closed her eyes. Edirin felt her heartbeat racing. Then came the final revelation. The truth hidden for 23 years. The truth nobody expected. The truth that changed everything. Auntie Faye slowly lifted her head and whispered, "The baby." Her voice cracked. "It's the muzo." The room exploded. A chair crashed backward. One lawyer dropped his pen. Tobo stood up instantly. Grandfather Anaborhi looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Victoria covered her mouth. And Edirin simply stared. Because after months of rivalry, months of insults, months of humiliation, months of war, the girl who mocked her, the girl who envied her, the girl who tried to destroy her, wasn't just another student, wasn't just another enemy. She was family. A blood Anaborhi. An heir. A legitimate descendant of the empire. And she had absolutely no idea what was coming next. Because outside the estate gates, inside a black Prado, 3 dangerous men had just received instructions. The property deal had collapsed. Tony had failed. And somebody powerful wanted their money back. Immediately. One of the men loaded a pistol magazine. Another unfolded a photograph. The picture wasn't Tony. It wasn't Edirin. It wasn't any Anaborhi. It was the muzo. The man smiled coldly. Find the girl. The hunt had begun. The revelation struck the Anaborhi estate like an earthquake. For several minutes after Auntie Faye's confession, nobody spoke. The massive study, usually filled with authority and confidence, suddenly felt small. Grandfather Anaborhi sat motionless. His hands trembled slightly against the polished wooden table. The old billionaire who had negotiated billionaire mergers without blinking now looked like a man carrying 23 years of regret. Across from him, Auntie Faye continued crying. Not quietly. Not politely. But with the exhaustion of a woman who had carried a secret for half her life. I wanted to tell the truth many times, she whispered. Then why didn't you? Victoria Anaborhi asked. Auntie Faye looked down. Because I was afraid. Of us. No. Her voice cracked. Of losing her. The room became silent again. Everyone understood. A poor woman had raised a child who belonged to one of the richest families in Nigeria. Every day she had lived with the fear that someone would discover the truth and take their child away. Not because they were cruel. But because they were powerful. And power often takes what it can protect. Edirin slowly stood. Her mind was racing. Images flashed through her head. The first day at Crownlake. The insults. The mockery. The lies. The jealousy. The endless competition. Now every memory looked different. Every fight. Every argument. Every confrontation. Family. They had been fighting family. Meanwhile, across Lagos, Tony Elumalu Karibo was having the worst day of his life. His office felt unusually cold. 3 lawyers sat across from him. None of them looked happy. The project was dead. Completely dead. The Eco-Atlantic waterfront deal had collapsed overnight. Banks had withdrawn. Investors had vanished. The disputed title had become public knowledge. Exactly as Edirin warned. Tony stared at the reports. Hundreds of millions already lost. Hundreds more about to disappear. His phone rang. Unknown number. Again. His stomach tightened. He already knew who it was. Chief Bello. The man behind the black Prado. The man nobody ignored. Tony answered immediately. Chief. The voice on the other end sounded calm. Dangerously calm. You disappointed me. Tony swallowed. I can explain. I am tired of explanations. The older man paused. Then came the sentence Tony feared most. You have 24 hours. The room suddenly felt smaller. Chief. 24 hours. The line went dead. Tony stared at the phone. 24 hours. Not 48. Not a week. Not even 2 days. 1 day. After that, nobody knew what would happen. And that uncertainty was far more frightening than any threat. At Crownlake Academy, rumors spread faster than wildfire. Students gathered in small groups, whispering, speculating. The entire school buzzed with gossip. Nobody knew the truth. But everyone sensed something was happening. Something huge. The arrival of Victoria Anaborhi had only fueled the mystery. Students who had never spoken to each other suddenly became investigators. What did she want with Zimuzo? I heard she's getting expelled. No. I heard she's related to somebody important. Impossible. Then why did the Anaborhis come personally? Questions multiplied. Answers didn't. And uncertainty always creates stories. Inside her dormitory, Zimuzo sat alone. For the first time in months, she felt completely lost. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages. Calls. Notifications. She ignored all of them. Her thoughts kept returning to one question. Why had Victoria Anaborhi asked about her father? The question wouldn't leave her alone. Because the truth was, she didn't know much about him. Not really. As a child, she accepted the vague answers her mother provided. Later, she stopped asking. Then life became about survival. About status. About escaping poverty. About becoming someone important. Questions about the past seemed irrelevant. Now they felt urgent. Dangerously urgent. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. The door opened. May entered. Immediately she noticed something was wrong. What's happened? Zimuzo forced a smile. Nothing. May didn't believe her. She sat down quietly. You know, she said softly, the strongest lies are usually the ones we tell ourselves. Zimuzo looked away. She didn't want wisdom. She wanted certainty. Unfortunately, life rarely offers certainty before disaster. That same evening, a black Prado parked 2 streets away from Auntie Faye's apartment. Inside sat 3 men. Watching. Waiting. Patient. The tallest among them studied a photograph. Zimuzo. He looked at it again. Then again. Finally he smiled. Pretty girl. The driver laughed. Pretty trouble. Another man checked his weapon. What exactly are we doing? The tall man shrugged. Following instructions. Instructions from who? A smile appeared. The kind of people you don't ask questions about. Silence returned. The Prado remained parked. Watching. Waiting. Like a predator. Back at the Anaborhi estate, another emergency meeting was underway. Security reports covered the table. Vehicle logs. Phone records. Surveillance summaries. Tobo's face looked grim. I don't like this. Victoria nodded. Neither did she. The security chief pointed to several photographs. The same vehicle has appeared near Crown Lake 3 times. Another photo. Near Auntie Faye's residence twice. Another. Near Tony Koribo's office. Grandfather Anaborhi frowned. The Prado. Yes. Nobody liked hearing that answer. Especially Tobo. Because he knew exactly who often used black Prados. Debt collectors. Fixers. Enforcers. Men who solved problems illegally. Victoria looked toward him. Could they know about the girl? Tobo didn't answer immediately. And that hesitation said everything. Hours later, Edirin stood alone on a balcony overlooking the lagoon. The city lights reflected across the dark water. Usually this view calmed her. Tonight it didn't. Too much had changed. Too quickly. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. You're thinking too loudly. She smiled without turning. Only one person spoke like that. Grandfather. The old man joined her. For several moments they simply watched the water. Then he sighed. I failed her mother. Edirin looked at him. This wasn't the billionaire speaking. This was a grandfather carrying regret. A long time ago, he continued, I thought power could solve everything. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon. I was wrong. The words sounded heavy. Painfully honest. What happens now? Edirin asked. Grandfather smiled sadly. Now. He looked toward the city. Now we find out whether blood matters more than choices. Elsewhere in Lagos, Tony made a decision. A terrible decision. The kind desperate people make. The kind that creates disasters. He opened his laptop. Accessed several confidential files. Then drafted a message. One recipient. One attachment. One betrayal. His finger hovered above the send button. The information could destroy the Anaborhis. Completely. It could also save him. Maybe. Tony closed his eyes. Then pressed send. Immediately. The email left. There was no taking it back. No undo. No second chance. And somewhere across Lagos, a journalist's phone lit up. The recipient wasn't just any journalist. She was Nigeria's most feared investigative reporter. A woman famous for exposing politicians, billionaires, and criminals. The subject line read, The Anaborhi Secret Heiress. The journalist opened the attachment. Her eyes widened. Then widened further. Within seconds she understood. This wasn't a story. This was a national scandal. And by morning, the entire country might know. Lagos never truly slept. It only changed shifts. While ordinary families settled into bed, another version of the city woke up. Politicians negotiated deals in private lounges. Business executives attended midnight meetings. Journalists chased stories. Bloggers hunted scandals. Influencers searched for content. And somewhere in Victoria Island, inside a brightly lit newsroom, one email was about to change everything. The investigative journalist stared at her screen. Then she read the documents again. And again. Each page made the story bigger. More dangerous. More explosive. Her editor noticed the look on her face. What is it? The journalist slowly turned her monitor. The editor's eyes widened. Are these verified? Not yet. But if they're true. The sentence never finished. It didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood. The Anaborhi family wasn't merely wealthy. They were one of Nigeria's most influential dynasties. Banks listened when they spoke. Governors returned their calls. International investors attended their events. Their influence stretched across industries. And now there was evidence suggesting that a missing heir had been hidden for 23 years. The editor stood up immediately. Nobody leaves this room. The newsroom became silent. Verify every document. Call every source. Check every date. Wake whoever needs to be woken. Nobody argued. By midnight, half the newsroom was working on the story. By 1 o'clock, they had confirmed the hospital records. By 2 o'clock, they verified the estate payroll documents. By 3 o'clock, they located witnesses who remembered Adizwa Anaborhi. By 4 o'clock, the editor looked exhausted. Because the story was real. Terrifyingly real. At exactly 5 a.m., Lagos exploded. The article went live. The headline spread like wildfire. Missing Anaborhi discovered after 23 years. Within minutes, social media erupted. Thousands of shares. Then tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. WhatsApp groups exploded. Twitter trends changed instantly. Bloggers copied excerpts. YouTube channels posted reaction videos. Radio stations discussed it before sunrise. By breakfast, the entire country was talking. And one name appeared everywhere. Zimuzo Nwokik. Inside Crownlake Academy, students arrived already holding their phones. Nobody discussed assignments. Nobody discussed exams. Nobody discussed classes. There was only one topic. One story. One name. Have you seen it? It's everywhere. Impossible. They say she's an Anaborhi. No wonder. I knew something was strange. Wait. Isn't she the same girl who mocked Bicycle Girl? The irony was almost too much. Students who once worshipped Zimuzo now looked at her differently. Not because they suddenly respected her, but because they didn't know what to think anymore. Some felt sympathy. Others felt betrayed. Many simply wanted more gossip. The internet had transformed her life overnight. Meanwhile, inside her dormitory, Zimuzo hadn't seen the article yet. She was still sleeping. For the first peaceful time in weeks. Then her phone exploded. Calls. Messages. Notifications. Voice notes. Mentions. Tags. Dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Her eyes opened slowly. Confusion. She reached for the phone. The moment she saw the headline, her heart stopped. For several seconds she couldn't breathe. She read the article. Then read it again. Then a third time. No. The word escaped her lips. No. Her hands began shaking. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls felt closer. The article included photographs. Old documents. Family connections. References to Adizwa. References to Auntie Faye. References to her. The entire country now knew a secret she herself had only begun to understand. A knock sounded. Then another. Then another. Students were gathering outside. Whispering. Watching. Waiting. Zimuzo felt panic rising. For years she had desperately wanted attention. Now she was drowning in it. Across Lagos, Auntie Faye sat inside the Anaborhi estate. Her eyes swollen from crying. A television screen displayed news coverage. Reporters discussed the scandal. Analysts debated implications. Commentators offered opinions. Nobody asked how she felt. Nobody asked what it cost to keep such a secret. Nobody asked how many nights she had spent terrified. The story belonged to the public now. And the public rarely cared about private pain. Victoria Anaborhi entered quietly. For a moment neither woman spoke. Then Victoria sat beside her. Auntie Faye looked surprised. One of Nigeria's most powerful women rarely sat beside anybody. Especially not like this. Without cameras. Without witnesses. Without status. Just person to person. Mother to mother. Victoria sighed. You protected her. Auntie Faye lowered her head. I tried. No. Victoria shook her head. You succeeded. The words broke something inside Auntie Faye. Fresh tears appeared immediately. Because for 23 years nobody had thanked her. Not once. Elsewhere. Tony Koribo watched the chaos unfold from his office. At first he smiled. The scandal was bigger than expected. Much bigger. The attention would distract everyone. Maybe buy him time. Maybe say him. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. Again. His smile vanished. He answered. Chief. The response chilled his blood. You leaked the story. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Tony remained silent. Silence confessed everything. Chief Bello laughed softly. The sound frightened Tony more than shouting would have. You made a mistake. Tony swallowed. I had no choice. You always have choices. The line went quiet. Then came the warning. The problem is that now people are looking in the wrong direction. Tony frowned. What does that mean? Another pause. Then. The Anaborhis aren't the secret anymore. The call disconnected. Tony stared at the phone. Confused. What secret? What was bigger than this? At noon. The answer arrived. And it arrived violently. Police vehicles surrounded one of Tony's development sites. Financial investigators entered the premises. Reporters appeared within minutes. Cameras followed. Questions exploded. Documents were seized. Computers confiscated. Accounts frozen. The media received another leak. This one anonymous. This one devastating. Evidence of financial misconduct. Questionable transfers. Suspicious property acquisitions. Possible fraud. Tony watched live television coverage from his office. His face turned white. Somebody had struck back. Hard. Very hard. And only a handful of people possessed enough power to launch such a counterattack overnight. The Anaborhis. Meanwhile, back at Crownlake Academy, a luxury helicopter suddenly appeared overhead. Students rushed outside. Teachers followed. Even security guards looked surprised. The aircraft descended toward the academy sports field. Dust swirled everywhere. Phones appeared instantly. Videos started recording. Nobody understood what was happening. Then the helicopter door opened. A tall elderly man stepped out. Grandfather Anaborhi. Beside him stood Victoria. Beside her stood Tobo. And behind them, Edirin. The entire school fell silent. Because everyone knew something historic was about to happen. The principal hurried forward nervously. What an honor. Grandfather raised a hand. Not now. He looked toward the crowd. Thousands of eyes watched. Students. Teachers. Staff. Everyone. Then he spoke. I am looking for my granddaughter. Silence. Pure silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And for the first time in her life, Zimuzo realized the world was about to learn exactly who she really was. But before anyone could bring her forward, a security officer ran toward Tobo. Urgently. Whispering something into his ear. Tobo's expression changed instantly. Then Victoria's. Then grandfather's. Edirin noticed immediately. Something was wrong. Very wrong. What happened? She asked. Tobo looked toward her. His voice was unusually tense. We've lost contact with Zimuzo. The crowd froze. What do you mean? He looked around the academy grounds. Then toward the main gate. Then back at the family. And finally delivered the sentence that made everyone's blood run cold. She disappeared 30 minutes ago. And somewhere on the Lagos-Ibadan expressway, a black Prado sped through traffic. Its windows heavily tinted. Inside sat 3 men. And a terrified young woman. Zimuzo no kick. the newly discovered Anaborhi heiress. Kidnapped before the world could claim her.